This is a group of songs and musical pieces that we've all written together over the last year. And I just thought I'd like to explain the title, the Juliet Letters. This comes from a small newspaper article regarding a Veronese professor from Verona, who for a few... it's all down here scripted, you know, you can tell. There was this professor in Verona. And for a few years, he took it on himself to answer all the letters addressed to Juliet Capulet, to Shakespeare's Juliet. Now, quite what was in any of these letters, I can only guess, or we can only guess. After all, these people were writing to an imaginary woman, and a dead imaginary woman at that. But we thought it was a beautiful gesture that he took on himself, and we decided that the form of the letter would be our inspiration, and what you hear tonight are a group of letters, hence the title, The Juliet Letters.
I don't know what I would do if this letter should fall into other hands, then it should pass through for other eyes. He said it was nothing, it's over and done. The rotten worm was burrowing still, its spirit invades me, bleeding me wide for other replies. I searched his pockets, I searched his eyes, I searched his wallet for clues or lies, and I found a number that I somehow dialed, and a woman answered, a woman smiled, and she hung up on the silence, unperplexed, innocently spun a Rolodex. I dialed again, I could not resist, revealing just the dentist receptionist. One day we'll laugh about this, or maybe we'll curse. But there's one thing, and it's making it worse. It's the lack of forgiveness that I can't disguise. No matter how well he lies, and we don't know each other anymore. And when we touch, our lips feel sore. I question the longing left in his eyes for other eyes.
It's a year since we first met Elvis. It was last October. We had a concert in the South Bank in London. And previous to that, we'd noticed that he was coming to our concerts, people would come back and say, "Oh, we saw Elvis Costello in the audience." And we were going to his concerts for a long time. And because of that, we got interested in meeting him.
A few years ago, I suppose, about 4 years ago or something like that now, I got a little disenchanted with rock concerts. I mean, I could predict the outcome pretty much in every concert, very few artists, there were any surprise. And I started to just listen to, broaden my taste a little bit. I'd always done that through records, but I hadn't always had time to attend concerts or opera or anything like that because it was constantly on the road.
Elvis came to our Shostakovich cycle on the South Bank, which was a very, it was one of the pinnacles of our career. It was a very big thing. And we found that he came to all the concerts, which we thought was rather amazing. And then we heard an interview of him on Radio 1, during which he said that he had become very interested in classical music.
Normally we would be seated in quite a close-knit semicircle. We're spread out across the stage. Everyone can see the 5 performers, and Elvis is part of the group in the performance of the Juliet letters. He's not stuck out on the side.
Our whole career is formed on playing music written by other people. Elvis's career is mainly, I think, formed from performing his own material.
There seems to be a happy coincidence that both individual tones of the players in the quartet and their communal sound seems to blend happily with my voice and certain characteristics of my voice. That's just a sonic fluke,
Therefore, it's not string quartet and voice, it's a vocal quintet, really.
The haunted look, the haunted grace, the empty laugh that you cultivate. You fall into that false embrace and kiss the air about her face. Who do you think you are? Betray bon mot, you almost quote from your quiver of literary darts. 1,000 or so tuneless violins thrilling your cheap little heart. Who do you think you are? My cigarette burns right down to the ash. My coffee cup is unstained. The way to hovers close at hand is courtesy strained. Who do you think you are? I close with my regards. I'm the red-faced gentleman caught in this picture postcard. Who do you think you are? Trying my best to make the best of your absence, though the joke gets tired and sorted, and seashell hearts get trampled underfoot, punchlines unrewarded. But even at this distance, it's not easy to accept the vision that I chase returns when I least expect it. I've fallen from your tired embrace. I kiss the air about the place that should be your face.
nothing like this has been done before. It's not a sort of normal crossover in the sense that people mix two things together to see what will happen. In the classical world, there's very few pieces for a vocalist and a quartet.
Because string quartet players don't ever get the chance to express themselves creatively, that all they're doing is interpreting somebody else's music. And the most we can do is change slight speeds or dynamics, or we can change notes if we feel they don't fit very well under the hand. We can only give them to somebody else to play. We can't actually get rid of them or replace them with anything else.
I learned about the structure of songs, as well as, Elvis maybe learned a lot from us, on quartets, how we work the sound, the structure of a Debussy quartet. I learned from him the structure of the song.
Once we had decided what the musical world is that we were inhabiting, or, we drew in a lot of different elements, it took away this fear that was somehow, I'm going to write down string quartet opus 1, That's not what I'm doing. I didn't write all this. This is a collaboration. Therefore, it's a sum of not all of our musical experience, but it comes out of our mutual musical experience and love and admiration for certain types of music from which we've drawn inspiration. It's not the same thing as sitting down to stun the world with this one work of art which must flatten everything else. I mean, that's a lot of nonsense.
Little bastard of that brother of mine, trying to trick a poor old woman, till I almost had a weakness. Last week, cousin Florence bit your Uncle Joe, hit him on the forehead with a knife and a fork, said that he looked like the devil. Then she said, pass the vinegar, I'm beginning to think that I'm the only one who hasn't taken to the drinking of it. Oh, I almost had a weakness. Me to mention these delicate concerns, but while I have to tolerate you family jewels, I really mustn't grumble, 'cause when I die the cats and dogs will jump up and down, and you little swines will get nothing, though I almost had a weakness. Why is Daddy not here? Are you crying? Why does he still love me? Will you take care of me if you both love me so? Why don't you love each other? Mama's gone missing. Daddy's on fire. Daddy's on fire. Daddy's on fire.
As soon as the idea of the letter came in, I think it began to take shape. We all had something to focus on. And it as well limited us to the extent that we were immediately thinking of something specific. And about the same time, we limited ourselves to just using these instruments and voice.
We sat down and made a list of the different kinds of song that we might attempt, the different kinds of letter. So, well, what kind of letter are they? You know, it was really like that. It sounds very crass when you say it, but we went, yeah, well, you could have a suicide note, and you could have a chain letter, and you could have a love letter, and you could have a goodbye note, and you could have a Dear John letter, whatever. You know, we toyed with all of these. And some unusual ones came out, you know, a letter of condolence, a child's note. They opened up characters that perhaps I wouldn't have thought of writing. You tend to always, when you write for your own voice, tend to keep things fairly close to characters that you can identify with, that it might even be you or elements of yourself, even negative elements. You sometimes sing in the voice of an element of yourself that you don't like, and you project it into an imaginary character, or you take on the voice of a bigot or something, or a character that you would hate, but to put them in to relief you take on their voice and imitate it. In the case of these letters, it gave us a great deal of scope, and the variety really came from the fact that we literally went home one night and made, with this list, and each person attempted to write a form of suicide note.
Dear sweet filth, dear were my wife, or whoever reads this. I think that I've lived too long with all of my promise unfulfilled. But there is a veil drawn over all of that. I know you'll probably say, spare us the melodrama. I don't know how he chose the pills or the stupid revolver. I'm out of luck. I'm not that strong. My hands, your neck, I might have run. Don't try to find me. I'm not worth anything anymore. I am not leaving you with all of your problems, 'cause the biggest one is me. Life is dark and cold as the sea. Embrace me in my anguish, put seaweed in my hair, and vow that you won't cry, because I've gone. I can't go on, I can't go on, I can't go on. I must close now.
I've been playing the cello since I was 9, and 2 years later we formed this quartet. So this is actually our 20th birthday this year, which is a great way to celebrate, to do such an interesting, diverse thing from what we usually do.
I'm fairly used to working with musicians from different backgrounds. I've worked with a lot of American musicians. Americans speak differently about music than English or Irish musicians. Irish musicians speak differently to English musicians, and I've worked with them also. Folk musicians speak differently to rock and roll musicians, and jazz musicians speak differently to everybody. So it really isn't terribly much of a surprise to me that classical people might express the same ideas using different syntax, different vocabulary. And we share some of the vocabulary, and some of the vocabulary has different meanings in the different contexts. So I had to learn some things fairly quickly, but I'm sure the same thing applied to the quartet, and they responded really positively to this oral way of learning things through example. We were unafraid to approach a model for reference and then throw it out the window. It became a very useful way of doing things.
The nicest things that I remember from our working towards the end product were Elvis sitting at the piano, literally composing a segment or a section of music there and then, and Mike and I frantically writing it down as quickly as we could, each of us being amazed at how easy it was for the other party to do that.
I think it's difficult to say that we set out to break rules with the Juliet letters. I wouldn't say that we consciously did. Having said that, I think that we have broken a few rules in that a more poppy type number won't have the set number of verses and choruses, and in the case of Jackson's Monk and Row, for instance, we've got an intro at the beginning and that intro is repeated at the end. That's quite unusual.
Jackson's Monk and Row is a song that Mike wrote for me last Christmas as a present, and in fact it's named after me because that was my nickname. It's a long nickname to have, but it was there was an office of solicitors next door to my dad up in Middlesbrough, And he came home one day and called me Jackson's Monk and Row, and that stuck. So Mike wrote this song. He played it at the piano. It was a really funky sounding song. You know, I've got a sort of bass, very funky. And in fact, it was something we thought maybe we shouldn't make this sound like that. We wanted to try and get it as pop as possible, and I think Elvis wanted to get it the other way. We were sort of crossing in a very interesting way.
As the sun beats down and life begins to complicate, will we both incinerate if we touch that brass and plate? This is all in noble sirs, highly paid solicitors, find enclosed by signed divorce, sad proceedings you endorse. The burden of pity will show in the people that we used to know. Have you got enough strength to carry it off? Jackson's Monk and Roll. Jackson's Monk and Roll.
Yes, I thought I wrote to Juliet began really long before I met the Brodsky Quartet. I mean, I received this letter, which is quoted fairly faithfully in the story, from a soldier who was in the Gulf, a female soldier. And it was a very poignant letter, given that it was written about 4 days before the war broke out, and it was full of fear and doubt about being there, not on a political sense, just a very personal way. And of course, the immediate reaction, I must admit, in myself, was kind of serves you right. You know, what are you doing in the army, particularly this kind of war?
Because it's a song about from a woman who's in the army at war, Mike says, well, why don't I play the siren sound? So he starts going, and it's, you know, we're all going, oh, maybe not, you know, a bit naff. But it ended up in the song, and it sounds amazing. He actually makes it sound like a World War II siren, you know. And I don't think people can believe that that's just on one instrument.
You sometimes adopt the unpleasant part of yourself and expand upon it and heighten it in order to create a character that's vivid in the story. And in this case, I made him a writer, a cynic, and some things that I suppose maybe come across to people from what I do. Receiving this letter and saying, writing to another of his friends and saying, here's a good joke on all of us, you know, this pathetic creature, you know. And then it quotes the letter more or less verbatim.
I thought I'd write to Juliet, for she would understand. And when someone is already dead, they can no longer let you down. Instead, I find myself talking to you as my oldest friend. Tell me how I can advise someone that I don't even know to welcome death, for I received a letter that is worth reporting. And though it may raise a cynical smile, it leaves a sinking feeling, like when a soldier in a story says to my pride and joy, you know the rest. And it's no joke, forgive me please, as I quote. This is a letter of thanks, as I'm so bored here and I can't say where. So I'm writing to people that I may never meet. And I was thinking of something you said. I'm a female soldier, my name is Constance. I enlisted in the military, needing funds for college. I'm 23 years old, and if I do get home alive, I imagine I may think again. I'm sleeping with my eyes open for fear of attack. Your words are comfort, they're the best things that I have. Apart from family pictures and of course my gas mask, I don't know why I am writing to I should open with a kiss, for if you're reading this, you must have opened up your case and found this letter where I placed it in between the silken lace. There were other clues, like your walking shoes, but I still refused to believe that you were meant to be the first to leave. Everybody here sends you their love. How could I forget? You still walk above or below. Perhaps you'll never know this purgatory. We never could agree. There's a thought, there's a pause, no time to repent. Eternally yours in a permanent land. But if I should give you up, if you're right and life just stops, and I never see your face again, then from unearthly pleasures, proud and plain, I shall abstain till you realize my loss is your surprise, unless you know otherwise. Then don't grieve. You see, I had to be the first to leave.
In terms of the musical background, if you're prepared to listen to the sound of, from the classical world, you know, there's people that might find my voice like a teeth-grating sort of thing. Similarly, the people from rock and roll say, where's the drums? You know, where's the surface kind of what I call cheap excitement in a lot of pop music. That's not to say I've renounced any of that, you know, it's not like a conversion to another form. This is a piece, and that's why it's called a piece. It's called a song sequence for string quartet and voice, and it has a title. It's a little bit different. It's not a rock opera. It's not the Brodsky Quartet's rock and roll record, you know. It's a new thing.
My dear impulsive darling, I suspect my letter got to you too late. And it's really just a silly fragment of paper, but it means so much to those who wait. All the suffering days and nights till I daydream again. Then you suddenly stand and I'll be damned if you didn't disappear with the dawn. Hours pass and darkness comes. Soon I will close my eyes. Will you return? If you don't reply, you'll be taking my life in your hands. You'll be taking my life in your hands. Taking my life in your hands. I don't know why, my dearest darling, I can tell you how I feel when you are near. When I see you have returned my letters and open, I will tear them up, your voice ringing in my ears. But you're kidding yourself if you think this correspondence will end. I can always pretend words I don't have the courage to say with you. Hours pass and darkness comes. Soon I will close my eyes. Will you return? If you don't reply, you'll be taking my life in your hands. You'll be taking my life in your hands. Taking my life in your hands.
I think that a lot of classical composers, if you ask them, or if you were able to ask even the ones who are no longer living, would say that the quartet represents for them a very intimate voice and something through which they can express their innermost thoughts. All the big composers said that, Beethoven, Shostakovich, they all said that it was their medium for expressing their private thoughts. And in fact, the interesting thing about that is that, of course, that's the way people use letters. They won't say something over the phone, and they won't speak to you about something they're nervous about or feeling heavy about, but they'll write it down much more easily.
I think it has an identifiable sound. When people ask what it is, I say, well, it's a sequence of songs written for string quartet and voice. I think it's very important that people recognize that the voice is effectively the fifth instrument in a quintet. It's not a singer with string quartet accompaniment, which has been done in the past. There's very limited repertoire for classical for trained voice and string quartet. This is a fairly underused medium. Considering the intimacy and the possibilities, I'm very amazed that it isn't used more often, because the possibilities for shade in the music and expression in text are very great.
Summertime withers as the sun descends. He wants to kiss you, will you condescend? Before you wake and find a chill within your bones, under a fine canopy of lover's dust and humorous bones, banish all dismay, extinguish every sorrow. Eternity stinks, my darling, that's no joke. Don't waste your precious time pretending you're heartbroken. There will be tears and candles, pretty words to say. Spare me the lily, white lily with the awful perfume of decay. Banish all dismay, extinguish every sorrow. If I'm lost or I'm forgiven, the birds will still be singing. It's so hard to tear myself away, even when you know it's over. It's too much to say. Banish all dismay, extinguish every sorrow. If I'm lost or I'm forgiven, the birds will still be singing.